Welcome to Ravenheart Renditions. This is Shop Time, and we're talking with Hendrik Varju again. How you doing, Hendrik?
Good. How are you, Andrew?
Doing good. Getting near the end of February here, so looking forward to March coming in strong and going out nice and warm, I hope.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the groundhog said winter was supposed to end a little sooner this year, so hopefully soon.
Yeah, I think that's fine with most of Wisconsin this year, but then again, you're up in Canada there, so I think you're a little more used to it than we are.
Yeah, but like I said before, our winters, I mean, it's been cold enough the last few weeks, but the snow has really dwindled down a lot compared to how it was growing up.
Oh,
So,
yeah. I remember years of not being able to see over snowbanks.
yeah, I mean, now I've, got to keep changing the gas in the snowblower because it's getting so old, the thing's backfiring on me.
Yeah, we had ours serviced. I'm glad we did because it's been working overtime this winter.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So, how's I heard a little bit online. I see Matt from Matt's Basement Workshop has a nod to the passion for wood and passion for food split site, along with
Right.
they mentioned you on Wood Talk Online as well.
Yeah, and just still working at trying to get the word out there. It's quite a few of my woodworking customers are also interested in cooking, but I really need to broaden the customer base in a much bigger way. So
Mhm.
it really is kind of like starting a new business in a way.
Mhm. Yeah, well, yeah.
It reminds me of when I did my first woodworking seminar. It was about 11 years ago. And I remember the first seminar I had like 4 people, and you kind of feel like an idiot, but somehow they were happy and came back. And the next seminar had 5, and the next seminar had 7, and I went from about 40 some people on my list to almost 1,000 within 5-6 years. So.
Yep.
Just you got to start to get known in other circles because cooking is fairly different from woodworking. So
Mhm. Us
different customer maybe.
us woodworkers do like to eat though.
Yeah, I mean Matt and Mark Spagnolo from the Wood Whisperer.
Mhm.
I mean I don't know if you know this, but Mark is half Hungarian as well,
Yep.
as I am.
Yep.
I think one of his parents is Hungarian and the other might be Italian,
Mhm.
and my mother's Mexican. So when you grow up with those kinds of cultures, food is kind of everything.
Mhm. Yep.
When you think about trying to pass the culture on to your kids too. I mean, to me, the food is almost the most important thing. Beyond there's music and there's dance and all that stuff, but for me, the food is like the main tie-in.
Yeah, everybody can sit down together over a good meal and feel happy afterward.
Yeah, yeah, and I mean, we grew up where the kitchen was really kind of the center of the home, and everybody always wanted to be in the kitchen, smelling the food and tasting it and trying it, and today there's so many people that just grab stuff out of the freezer like fish sticks or whatever and throw it in the oven, and it's not quite the same feel.
And my wife and I were talking. We actually this week we've been doing more home cooking because we have such go thing. Both of us were so
Yeah,
sick of grabbing something somewhere, and we've had actual sit down cooked meals for
yeah,
several days in a row now, and both of us are like, it's so good.
yeah. And I mean, sometimes it's even just something really simple like I'm going to make some homemade French fries, like something you would normally have at McDonald's or whatever,
Mhm.
but just the way you're cutting them a little thicker and frying them fresh, and like it's not always healthy food, but it's everybody wants to gather around and taste them right when they're done, and
Yep.
you can make homemade donuts and all kinds of stuff. So it's just amazing. It's not the same as picking it up at the local donut shop. So
Yeah. Yeah.
anyways, it's all good stuff, and I'm just starting to advertise more, get some flyers out there, through Canada Post. I do some ad campaigns for woodworking too, where I deliver, several thousand flyers to neighborhoods in Toronto, like through the post office.
Mhm.
So, you can target sort of specific neighborhoods. You can research which neighborhoods have higher per capita incomes, so that
Mhm.
you're targeting areas that can afford maybe some of the services you provide. So
Sure.
yeah, anyways, it's sort of I know how to go about it, but it's a lot of work. You gotta hustle again, you know.
Yep. Well,
Nobody knows who Hendrik, the amateur chef, is.
well, I hope it keeps going. I know when I go to the site, I have to make sure that I click on the Passion for Wood side, because otherwise I got to go get me a snack because your photos
Yeah.
make me hungry.
Yeah, just on the weekend, I know you had your President's Day, right, on Monday,
Yes.
and we have in Ontario this new holiday they came up with a few years ago called Family Day on Monday.
Hmm.
Basically, just because everybody was complaining that there's too much time between New Year's New Year's Day and Easter.
Mhm.
And sometimes Easter can be late in April even. So
Yeah.
they basically just wanted to make up a holiday and give us one day off work. So they called it Family Day. So on the weekend, I was cooking again with the kids, and we made some potato pancakes like my mother used to make, and then made a really nice Hungarian apple strudel, like with the phyllo pastry.
Oh.
So, you know, you break into it with your fork, and it's just like tons of layers of this brittle pastry just shattering.
Oh.
You know, kind of like the Greek baklava, that kind of thing, you know, where you cut
Mhm.
through it and it's just layered, and
Yep.
it's amazing stuff.
Oh.
So I made two big, huge ones, and me and the kids. I mean, my wife can't eat it because she's got a gluten intolerance.
Mm.
But me and the kids have just been chowing down at it every day. Finally finished it yesterday. But yeah, it's good stuff.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I'm making me hungry again here.
Yeah, and it's kind of neat stuff because when I do my woodworking, you know, a lot of people think of woodworking as creative, and
Mhm.
you know, the design part is creative for sure. And a lot of people do free form work where they're, you know, carving and using rasps to shape things, you know, like a Sam Maloof chair.
Mhm.
And that's very artistic and creative. But a lot of what I do in woodworking, I think, is more of a technician kind of thing, more of a technical thing as opposed to free form.
Mhm.
Whereas when I'm cooking, I am actually making it up as I go along often and able to do it, which I'm not always able to do in woodworking. So it's sort of a little more free form for me, like doing the cooking and tasting and changing the recipe as you go, you know. So
Yeah.
that's kind of fun.
Yeah. Cool.
Kind of opens things up a bit.
Yeah, I one of the freeform people. I actually got to go and have a talk with Andy Chidwick down at the woodworking shows.
Okay.
It,
Yeah.
it goes around the United States, and it was in Milwaukee, Wisconsin.
Uh-huh.
And I got to talk with Jim Heavey, and I got to talk with Andy Chidwick, and Andy Chidwick's doing a thing called the Sawdust Tour, and I got to have him come and visit the shop. So on the people listening, when you I don't know when it'll be out there. I know he's pretty busy with the shows. He goes for I think he left here on Monday, and I think he was gonna be in New Jersey by the following weekend doing the show there. But I'm part of the Sawdust Tour, so that was kind of fun. And
Good.
did the pay it forward thing where I got a tool from the last person that did it, and I passed one of my tools on to the next person. So
Sure. When was this? Just a week or two ago?
yeah, actually earlier this week, I think it was
Okay.
18th or 19th, that Monday. So
So that would have been on President's Day then,
yes,
on the
yes, it
holiday.
was.
Yeah.
So it
Okay.
was on President's Day. So he stopped by that evening and checked out
Yeah.
the shop. It was pretty fun.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, yeah. Look, I don't know if you know this, but Matt, you know, Matt from Matt's Basement Workshop,
Mhm.
like, he's not really that far from me. He's in Michigan,
Yeah.
and you know, I figure it's probably something like I don't know, 7-hour drive or something. So
Mhm.
it's not that far. You know, so I said to Matt, I mean, sometime since you're so close, maybe you should come down, spend a couple of days woodworking, and spend another couple of days cooking. And then
that
home weighing about 15 pounds more.
Yeah, yeah. I was
But
gonna say it's not too far for me to bomb up that way either. He's about the same distance south from the border, except he's directly across the lake from me. So it'd be a longer drive because I have to go around the bottom of the lake to get to Matt.
I see. Yeah, I thought you were way further west. You're not that far.
No, actually, it's I'm about the middle of Wisconsin. So
Yeah.
yeah, so it's
So if you drive straight north, are you hitting Ontario, or are you hitting Manitoba, or what?
I'm gonna have to go look at a map. I'm not exactly
Okay.
sure.
Sure.
You have to check it out. It's been a long time since I was in Canada. My dad and I took a trip to do a fishing trip up there once. So it was quite a while ago, though.
Yeah. Well, if you get a chance and you're able to come up sometime, let me know. I'll have the phyllo pastry already defrosted.
Oh, I would be fine with that. So, well, what's been going on in your shop recently?
Well, just working away. I've got some desks that have been on the go for months.
Mm-hmm.
Building this desk that's about almost 12 feet long on one wall and another 5 feet on the wall behind it.
Wow.
And some beautiful curly cherry veneered sheet stock, sort of in the center of the desktops, like all this curly cherry veneer. And then that's surrounded in a 1/2-inch strip of maple, and then about 3-inch wide solid cherry around that. So it's sort of like panels, all flush, but on the top, but all like sort of panels and frames.
Wow.
So I've been working on that, and I've got seminars every Saturday morning, and students coming and going in between, and then it's a pretty busy routine, 6 days a week. So
yeah, that's
6 days a week in the shop, and then 1 day on Sunday cooking with the kids, which is my outlet.
There you go. Well, that's pretty cool. Yeah,
lots of things going on.
That's cool. My workbench, normally I do almost all my recording from my shop when I'm doing this, and my workbench is a little more cluttered than it normally is when I'm doing this. I have about 60 shorter pieces of wood cut for the cabinet doors for my parents that I'm making.
Right.
And all different lengths, and they're all squared off on one end. Some of them are cut to length, and I have the setup blocks ready for the router, because I'm doing the routing of it's just 2 bits where it does the profile and then Raylan style. I wanted to put that together and make one word out of it. So I have the Raylan style cutters, and one for the edges and one for the ends. Yeah.
So you're making 15 doors then?
Yep. Yeah, about there is 15 doors. So yeah, it's I've got them all here, and they're all in various states of being done. So they're going good. I did run into one problem, and I mentioned it to you before the show here. When I was squaring off the one end, a lot of what I do is a one-off project a lot of times. So I'll just square my stuff off, and I'll cut it by hand and square it off on a shooting board and be done. Well, I didn't really want to do that with this many boards, so I have a good Incra minor gauge, and I set it up on my table saw, and I did a couple cuts on some test pieces.
Yeah.
And I realized that it was, really close, but it wasn't square. And I went through really slow and checked it out. And as I would cut it, the back of the blade it's on the left-hand side of the blade where the minor gauge is in the minor slot. And I'm cutting it, and the back of the blade would touch it just a little bit differently than the front did. And
you'd cross the entire blade, like you'd continue until you pass all the rear teeth, or not?
Yeah, if I did it,
you might stop early because you don't want to fall off the back of the saw.
Yeah, well, if I did it so I passed the whole thing, it wasn't square. If I stopped before I got to the back, it ended up being square.
Oh yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. And why are you doing it on the left side of the blade in the first place?
Well, because some of them are a little longer, and I have a little more room on that side.
Okay. A lot of people consider my procedure for cross-cutting a bit unusual because I always use the miter gauge in the right slot.
Mm-hmm.
And every time you see a picture of a table saw with a miter gauge, or even on the front cover of the manual, they always show the miter gauge in the left slot.
Yes.
I'm convinced the only reason they do that is so that you realize there isn't much extension wing on the left side to support the work, so you'll go out and buy their sliding table.
True. Okay.
because any table saw with a generous extension wing or extension table, it's always on the right.
Mm-hmm.
And I figure, well, I've got this big, huge table over here on the right. Why don't I use that to support my stock when I'm cross-cutting too?
Sure.
You know, because it's not, I mean, they they kind of say the rip fence is just for ripping, but you almost never use it all the way to the right unless you're ripping a whole sheet of ply, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So anyway, so my miter gauge is always in the right slot.
Okay.
So did you try putting the miter gauge in the right slot and cross-cutting on that side, and then you were successful?
Yeah, if I cut it on the right side, it's just like if I would use the fence, where, you know, it cuts perfectly square, everything's wonderful, and it's got just a little bit. I guess the way I was taught to set up the fence, where the fence, the blade, whatever, the very right front corner is what's cutting, and when you push it through, you hear nothing on those back teeth ever.
Yeah, yeah. Now you see, some people accomplish that by towing the fence out to the right at the back of it,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like they angle it towards the right, you know, maybe
Sure.
a fourth of an inch or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But the way I set up a saw is I actually prefer to keep the fence parallel to the right miter slot, but I actually change the trunnions of the saw to change the blade position instead of the fence.
Okay.
You know, this is all in my DVD course on table saw, which is called Revelations on Table Saw Setup and Safety.
Mm-hmm.
And I take people through the entire setup of a table saw from scratch. It could be a brand new one, or it could be an old one that's never been tuned. And, you know, if it's an old style sort of contractor saw, you've got to actually loosen the trunnions down inside the saw and move it, like turn it.
Mm-hmm.
But with a bigger saw like the one I have now, is a Delta Unisaw, you just loosen the 4 bolts that hold the top down to the cabinet, and you just turn the top. Like, you're not actually moving the blade, you're turning the top instead, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the way I set it up is I have, if I set my blade to maximum blade height, you know, which is about 3 1/8 with
Mm-hmm.
a 10-inch blade, then I have the rear part of the blade canted away from the right miter slot by about 3 to 5 thou at maximum blade height.
Yep.
As you bring the blade height down, that distance decreases. So instead of 3 to 5 thou, it might be 2 to 4 thou or 1 to 3 thou.
Yep.
But what that does for me is it means that every time I do a crosscut on the right side of the blade, there's no way those rear teeth can hit the wood, so I always get a perfect cut.
Mm-hmm.
And as long as the fence is parallel to the right miter slot, I also never rub on the rear teeth of the blade either when ripping. So
Okay.
it takes care of both problems.
Mm-hmm.
But if I move my crosscut piece to the left miter slot, like you were doing,
Mm-hmm.
then I definitely will hit the rear teeth if I go that far.
Okay.
Okay, so years ago, many, many years ago, I had another table saw. I hadn't come up with this adjustment, you know, method yet.
Mm-hmm.
And clearly, I was used to cutting on the right side, but clearly my blade was angled the other way, because anytime I hit the rear teeth, I would leave a mark, like a burn mark, and it wouldn't be correct. So I got in the habit of setting the blade really high and just passing the front teeth and then stopping under the teeth and turning saw off, and I would get a perfect cut every time. So if I had to do a cut on the left side now, I would do it that way.
Mm-hmm.
But if I can do it on the right, which normally I can, I just do it there, and it doesn't matter if I hit the rear teeth because they won't touch.
Okay.
Know? So actually, if you go to the table saw DVD web page on my website, there's a little mini clip there that shows a couple of, it's about 5 minutes of footage there, and one of them is about that very thing.
Okay.
And I demonstrate putting a piece of wood on the left miter slot, and I purposely push halfway into the rear teeth and turn the saw, and the blade, you know, burns its way into the wood sideways, like in a curve shape. And I call that shutdown runout, because when you turn off the saw, the blade wobbles even more than normal. Like the runout increases as it starts or stops.
Yep.
So I call that shutdown runout. And anyway, that's what it's all about. So I would recommend you just do all the cuts on the right.
Yeah, and I think, well, there's at least 90% of them I can do on that side anyway, and I think there's 2 of them that are too long for that side, and that's it. So
So there's always a possibility too that the miter slots themselves are not parallel to each other. Like that does happen on some saws.
Oh, I
Depending on the
I
quality,
should,
it could be worse on some brands.
I should check that. I mean, it's not a cheap little saw, so it should be okay. But I don't know if I know I've checked the right hand miter slot being parallel to the blade or parallel to the fence, and checked everything with the fence, and the same thing. I don't know where I picked it up or learned it, but you know the same thing where it cants off just a little bit where it's not going to touch those back teeth if I'm up against the fence, but it does obviously on the left-hand side.
Yeah, see, when people tell me they set their blades exactly parallel to the right miter slot, my belief is that that's nearly impossible to do.
Mm-hmm.
You're likely to be canted one way or the other a bit, even if it's only 1 or 2 thou.
Yeah.
And I'd rather cant it away
Yep.
from the side I used to crosscut on.
Mm-hmm.
In my case, I got this 52-inch fence rail and a huge extension table, so I might as well do all crosscuts on the right. And anytime I'm cutting something long, I've got this huge table to support it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I cant it, that way. But if someone had to crosscut on the left side for some reason, then you'd want to cant it the other way, like away from the left miter slot at the rear teeth, right?
Sure. Yeah, and I'll make sure I put a link to the footage you're talking about on the
you just go to the DVDs
too.
page and then just click on the table saw video, and then there's a clip there you can click on and watch 5 minutes of footage.
Yeah.
There's always a clip like for every video, and
Mm-hmm.
there's usually 2 different little sections of video shown like 2.5 minutes each or whatever.
Yeah.
So it just gives you a little taste for it. And by the way, it's much lower resolution on that clip than it is on the real DVD, just so you don't think, oh, gee, that's an awful quality video.
No, I've seen some of the videos. They're very high quality. They're very good.
Yeah, but on the website, because of bandwidth issues, we compress it a lot for that.
Yeah.
Plus, we want you to buy the real thing, right?
Of course.
you want it to be clear, you buy the real one.
Yep.
Anyway, but yeah, now the other thing though is clearly your saw has the blade angled in the direction I prefer,
mm-hmm.
because you're burning on the left side, not the right.
Yeah.
But it might be canted more than it should be, in which case your cuts on the right side of the blade will be slightly lower quality than they could be.
Yeah.
So I like to measure. What I do is I clamp a steel rod to my miter gauge in the right slot.
Mm-hmm.
So something like a rod from a router edge guide.
Okay.
Like I got a Bosch router edge guide that has 2 steel rods,
mm-hmm.
or it could just be a dowel rod.
Mm-hmm.
But I set that super, super close to a front tooth, a right pointing tooth.
Okay.
And then I measure how much space is between the end of the rod and the carbide tooth, like using a feeler gauge.
Okay.
And let's say the distance between them is 3 thou, like just some random number.
Mm-hmm.
Then I rotate the blade so the same tooth is at the back of the blade,
yep.
at maximum blade height, and I want the measurement now to be 3 to 5 thou bigger than it was at the front. So yours might be more than that, like it could be 15 thou bigger.
Okay.
And if that were the case, reducing that will give you a better quality cut on the left, on the right, and the left side would burn less, like it wouldn't be as drastic.
Sure.
So, it's worth checking these things up. Once they're set up once, that's pretty much set forever, unless you really bump your saw hard somehow, like smash into the table or the trunnions or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But, whenever someone hires me to go to their shop and set up a new saw, that's a whole procedure I go through. I angle the trunnions or the tops to get that clearance, and then, just sort of teach them that if you do all your crosscuts on the right, you'll have no problems, no burning. And, of course, everyone rips on the right if they're right-handed, so we don't have any problems there either.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, the right hand is where that rips everything, because that's where that... Yep.
Yeah, and it's funny because even left-handed people, like to me, they should have the saw all set up in reverse, and they should be ripping with the fence to the left.
Mm.
But they never do, because they grew up in a right-handed world.
Oh, yeah, they're stuck.
And wherever they were learning woodworking in high school or whatever, they had the fence on the right, so they just learned to adjust to it, right?
Yeah, they had to do it the opposite way, because that's the way everything seems to go.
Yeah, and then when I go to a woodworking show, almost all bandsaw manufacturers have now changed their design so that the fence is supposed to be on the left of the blade when you're ripping, which I don't understand at all, because it never used to be that way. It used to always be on the right because we're right-handed. Most people are right-handed.
Yeah.
So I've got a Laguna 16 HD, and it is designed for the fence to be on the left, but I changed it. I drilled new holes in the table, and I moved all the fence rails to force it to the right, because that's what I know from the table saw. So
Yeah,
why do I want to change my technique, right?
Yeah, I used to have an old jet, and just a little 12-inch jet, and I got a Craig fence for that, and the Craig fence is basically set up to do like you're talking on the opposite side of what the table saw would be.
Right.
And then now I've got a Laguna 14-inch, and that one's the same way. It's got it on that's set up for that side too.
Yeah, and what I don't understand is if you have it on the left, then that means the part that you're ripping can never be wider than the distance from the blade to the throat of the machine.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas if your fence is on the right, provided you have long enough fence rails, there's no limit. Like you could even rip a 48-inch wide sheet of ply on a bandsaw if you made fence rails long enough, right?
Sure.
But you could never do it on the left because the column is in the way.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah.
Like 15 years ago, all bandsaws, as far as I saw, always had the fence on the right, just like a table saw, because we're right-handed. And somehow somebody started putting them on the left, and it caught on, just like the left-tilt table saw caught on. I totally disagree with it. I just say, this isn't right. I'm right-handed. Why do I want to change my technique and have to work as a left-hander just because it's a bandsaw, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's
so I just
different. Never thought of
holes. Yeah, I drilled new holes in my Laguna table, a brand new bandsaw a few years ago. I just drilled new holes and moved the whole rail to the right and put another rail on the back, so I could have my fence right on it, like way off to the right, and
Yeah.
sort of did my own little retrofit.
There you go. I got to check that out sometime. That sounds kind of cool. Well, I guess the other parts of my my little project here, like I said before, I'm doing using the router bits to do the stiles and rails, and just one bit for each. One cuts the edge and one cuts the end.
Right.
And what I did is I went through and kind of made setup blocks, and that way, when I go from doing all of the edges, then I can just use the setup block to take the other piece and make sure it goes, and made sure everything fits good, because I hadn't used this set since we bought it quite a while ago, and I had to make sure that it fits, because I didn't want it too tight when I put the style into the I didn't want it. I wanted to fit snug but not too tight. You want to be able to hold it without it dropping off, but I didn't want to slam it home with a mallet either. So everything seems to be going well. The only thing that I think I'm going to run into right now is it's just a recessed panel door, but it's a beadboard that they're going to use. So I'll have to make sure that when I cut the beadboard, that the two doors that go next to each other, that those lines are going to match up, that you're not looking at it, off, like that one's an inch in and one's 3 inches in.
Yeah. So the whole panel is beadboard.
Yes. Yep. They want beadboard.
Painted? Is the whole thing going to be painted?
Yep. The whole thing's going to. Yep. They want to paint the whole thing white. So.
Yeah. Well, good, because any mistakes you make, you can just caulk the holes right in, right?
I know. I like it.
Right over it.
I like it. Well, there, just fill that in.
Bigger the crack, the darker the color you recommend for the paint.
There you go.
It definitely would be worthwhile to try and center the lines of the beadboard, even on a per door basis.
Yes.
Like, it'll waste material, but it definitely, your eye will tell if
it's not.
If the first line on the left is like an inch from the stile, and on the right it's 3 inches.
Yeah.
I would rather waste material, but actually center all of them.
Yeah, and that's the plan, to make sure that we have them all centered on the doors. Each door looks the same. I mean, especially where, if it was a flat panel, it'd be different. But where the beads are lining up, like you said, you want them centered on the doors, and it's an old house, so two doors next to each other are the same size, but even though they're supposed to be the same size as the ones on the other side of the sink, they're not.
The cabinets themselves are not symmetrical then.
No,
Like
they're not symmetrical or square or.
It's a homemade job, right?
Yes, it's definitely some. I could see somebody putting them together themselves, and
Yeah.
we fixed them up as much as we could, but the doors are gonna actually make it look pretty nice in there. So.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Now you were
Yeah.
saying you do it a little different with the stiles and rails.
Yeah. I don't even use the rail and style cutters that most people use.
Mm-hmm.
The main reason people like them is because it sort of cuts the groove for the panel and the joinery all in one,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yep.
But when you're cutting the pattern on the end of the rails, you really have to use a good backer board, right?
Yes.
Or you just split it right out there, like
Mm-hmm.
just tear it out. I've always preferred like actual joinery at the rail and style meeting point, like something that's quite strong.
Mm-hmm.
So for something like a really big door, like not necessarily a house door, but let's say an armoire door, then I would do mortise and tenon joinery. And for sort of normal cabinet doors that aren't that big, then I use multiple dowels. And let's say I'm using, like I have one of those dowel max jigs. I don't know if you've heard of those.
Sure.
Yeah, but I use like on a 3-inch upper rail.
Mm-hmm.
I'll have 4 dowels in there.
Oh, okay.
2-inch long dowels, so they're going 1 inch deep into each side. So they're really, really strong.
Mm-hmm.
So the thing is, I just cut all my parts to length, then do the joinery, and then I route the groove for the panel on the router table using a straight bit or maybe an up spiral bit.
Mm-hmm.
They're through cuts on the rails, but they're stopped cuts on the stiles, right?
Okay. Yep.
So that takes a little bit of setup with the stop blocks. And then if I want a profile on the inner edge of the frame, like where the panel is going to be, then I clamp the door together, dry fitted, without the panel in, and just lay the entire door on the router table with no fence, like just face down, and a bearing guided bit goes around the entire inside of the door frame. Okay, now that leaves a rounded corner in the corner, like let's say it's a chamfer bit, you get that little round curve in the corner.
Sure.
And it's funny because I do like it looking square better, which is what a rail and style, setup gives you.
Mm-hmm.
But like if I showed a client the same example with one square and another one round, they would probably agree that they like it square better.
Mm-hmm.
But then I would have to hand chisel the corners, right?
Yep.
So basically, I don't show the square version.
There you go.
I just show the round version and say, look at the nice curve in the corner. Like, oh yeah, that's beautiful. And that's the end of the discussion, right? And I'm not a kitchen cabinet builder. Like I'm not building kitchens. I'm just building maybe 4 doors here and there, or one project might have 8 doors, but it's not like 25 or 30 at a time.
Yeah.
So I do it in a little more broken down process as opposed to those bits. I'm doing it in different, like with proper joinery in the corners, strong, and then doing the groove for the panel separately, and doing the decoration on the inside of the door separately, and then the panel can be raised with just a regular, like I use a horizontal raised panel bit, like a 3.5-inch diameter.
Sure.
Or there's also another thing I do occasionally, and I teach this to people, is, doing the cove cutting on the table saw, going diagonally.
Mm-hmm.
For someone that maybe is just building 4 doors or something, and they don't want to invest another $100 for a raised panel bit.
Yeah.
They can do it on the table saw. It takes more sanding and scraping when they're done cutting, but if it's only 2 doors or 4 doors, it's not the end of the world, and I can do any radius I want on the table saw without buying a new blade, right?
Yeah, I actually
cool technique too.
I actually made some molding like that once. It was just one piece that I had to then cut and put around a column, but it was kind of fun to do.
Yeah.
I don't think I'd want to make a whole house worth that way, but
I do a whole seminar just on making your own moldings. And with the same 10-inch blade, I can make a cove that's only a 1/2-inch radius, or I can make one that's like a 5-inch radius, like massive crown molding, right?
Yeah.
But it's an amazing technique, because usually when I'm working on a piece of furniture, I might maybe only need 6 feet of molding total, or 8 feet. It's not like I'm doing a whole room.
Yeah.
So those kinds of techniques allow me to do some pretty beautiful looking things without having to have a big shaper with bits that cost hundreds of dollars per profile, right?
Yeah, and that you use, once every 2 years.
Yeah, like exactly. And for the hobbyists especially, like they're not going to cough up. It's not the shaper cost; it's the bit cost.
Yeah.
You could drop 500 to 1,000 for each bit, and then you only want it for one little job, and then you're wondering why you spent so much money on it.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
It's nice to learn these other techniques. And my moldings are usually layered, so it'll be 3 separate layers with different routed profiles layered together. And when you're done, it just looks like some monster molding someone made with a shaper, but you did it some other way, right?
Yeah. Yeah, that's like this too. I mean, if I wasn't doing 15 doors, like you said, if I was doing 2 or 4, I'd probably do it different. But I'm like, you know what? I just want to run these through and I'm done.
Yeah, I mean, I've just the reason I've never liked the rail and style cutters is, number one, they are fussy to set up. Like the height has to be exact.
Yes.
The stock thickness has to be very consistent.
Mm-hmm.
The boards have to be super flat. The router table has to be flat. The insert has to be flat.
Yep.
So all those little headaches, and then on top of it, the little joint created by it is like a really short, stubby thing.
Mm-hmm.
That I've seen some failures. I mean, obviously, most kitchen cabinet doors hold up with that kind of joinery, but I have seen failures. Probably because it wasn't as precise as it should have been made, and there's not a lot of wood there to hang on to.
No.
So it makes me feel better having either 2-inch long dowels in there or mortise and tenon.
Sure.
And like you almost can't break it. You'd have to destroy the door to break the joint. So I've always kind of liked having more substantial joinery in the corner there.
Yeah. Well, and one of the nice things about the beadboard that we're using is it's not solid wood beadboard. It's actually the engineered beadboard. So we don't have to worry about it moving. So we don't have to worry about it blowing out the doors. So that part's nice too.
Yeah. And is it flat on the back or is it textured?
No, it is flat. It's smooth on the back, and then the beadboard on the front, and then it's they'll have to paint it. But it actually, I made a couple of mock-up doors just out of the small scrap pieces just to see what they'd end up looking like, and they looked pretty nice in the end. So
yeah. What kind of paint color are they going with?
It's actually a flat white because it goes with the rest of the kitchen pretty good. So
yeah. Yeah, I mean, I've seen doors like that were kind of a cream, like a white, but a little more of a color of cream, And and sometimes you can do something painted like that, but instead of just a normal paint, like actually go with a anti-crackle, or even just a white wash, like some kind of semi-transparent or a faux finish even, where it takes more work, but it maybe adds just a little bit of an effect to it, not just all flat,
Yeah. Yeah.
You can do some neat stuff even with paint. I mean,
yeah, that'd be cool.
I'm used to working in cherry and walnut and nothing's painted, but painted stuff can be beautiful if it's done right. So.
Yeah. Well, and these are pine. I mean, we went and we picked out some really nice pine boards, and then I milled them up, and everything is nice and flat, and everything's going good. And so when they're painted,
wood clear or is it knotty? It's clear.
No, it's clear. Yep, it's
okay.
actually some pretty nice stuff. I got a couple of extra boards over there just in case I goof up, and if I don't goof anything up, I think they might have to make something.
Yeah, and I mean, since you're painting it, you don't have to. I mean, you still have to make sure you don't have any huge mill marks, but you don't have to sand it to perfection like bare wood. So. That when you get a primer and paint on there, it'll hide some minor imperfections. So.
Yeah, little stuff. And then my plan anyway is to go through and make sure, because of the bits, when you put the doors together, there's that little bit of line there. That's going to be all sanded down and make sure that when they paint it, they aren't even going to see the difference in between where it goes from style to rail. It'll be just one solid thing when it's painted.
Right.
So.
Yeah, and a lot of manufacturers now put like a tiny V groove between the rail and style there on purpose and just say it's design, right? Because even if you get it dead flat, if just a tiny bit of wood movement will often crack the paint on the line. sometimes just routing a V groove there and just saying that's part of the design, like it sort of matches the beadboard, can be a smart way to go.
Mhm.
And also, if the rail and stile aren't perfectly flush, you can't tell because of the space between them. So that's a way to like save work having to flush everything off perfectly, you know?
No, that's a thought too. I have to make
So,
if they're not working, they're all getting changed.
yeah, because then if the paint cracks, it's way down inside this V groove, like down inside of a shadow, so nobody can see the crack, right?
Yeah.
It's kind of like breadboard ends, right? If you have breadboard ends and you have painted, you know, it could be milk paint or whatever,
Mhm.
you know, you got a lot of movement going on the main tabletop, but the breadboard end isn't moving in the same direction, so you'll always get the paint cracking along the line. So it's better to just route a design between the two and just say that's the design and get over it, you know.
Yeah, every now and then it's a design feature. It's not a flaw.
Yeah, exactly. You know something's going to go wrong, you might as well find a way to hide it down the road, you know.
Yeah, that's actually a good idea. Thanks.
Yeah. Yeah, because you have all these grooves on the beadboard anyway, so.
Mhm. Yeah, that would tie
those
in.
grooves would be semicircular, right?
Yes.
Like a V, but rounded. So
Mhm.
you could buy a router bit that has no bearing, and it's kind of like a quarter round bit on both sides, like a beadboard bit, a beading bit,
Mhm.
and you could just run that along the dividing line, like even after the doors are assembled, and that would mimic the beading on the panel and hide all these little problems with the paint down the road.
Yeah, that could and tie it right in with the rest of the design too. That'd be kind of cool.
I think it would probably look good.
Yeah. Cool. Well, thanks for the idea.
You're having some problems with the router table insert, or you're.
Yeah, there was a little bit. There was a little bit at one point, and I thought I had. When I was doing the setup of the blocks, what happened was I had both ends would be perfect, and the center would be actually. It ended up when he looked at it closer, it wasn't that the center was different than the ends. Is all it really was, and I thought that my plate was all messed up. And I talked to him, and it had a plastic plate. It now has a metal plate, and I checked the plastic plate and everything, and it's not, it's not just plastic. It's actually pretty high grade plastic. And when I took it off and put my straight edge on it, because I've got one of the Veritas straight edge things, and I checked that's flat and everything. It was flat. It was fine, but with the top itself, I don't know if it settled or what happened, but there was a little bit of difference between the plate and the outsides. And like you said, if it's not perfect,
right,
those bits are just about useless, because I couldn't get them to work, and it would be tight on one end and loose in the middle, and
sometimes you take the plate out to change a router bit, and when you put it back in, there's sawdust falls down into the groove.
Yeah.
Into the rabbet, and suddenly the plate's a little high here and there, and you get a lot of problems, right?
Yeah, so I had to do some maintenance, which it was time. I should have did it probably before I even started this, but I did a little maintenance, cleaned it all up, made sure everything was flat, and after some work, which should have been done before I started, everything's going good now, and everything's flat, and it's actually a woodpecker lift. And I like the lift because I think
they got the lift built into the plate.
Yes.
And the plate is the red aluminum.
Well, this is one of the old ones. This is before they even had because it's what they call their quick lift, I think it was, and it's the first version of their quick lift. So the new quick lifts has this big thing that looks like a spring and a pole, and you push it down, and then it sprays.
I've used it,
Yeah, and mine doesn't have a spring. Mine is completely Andrew powered. You have to hold it and lift on your own. So mine's the first version of that, and they stood behind it. I mean, they said, "Hey, here, we'll send you this, we'll send you that. What's going on?" And it was actually a problem with one of the leveling screws that was more than anything, and it probably wasn't even their fault. It was probably mine, but they stood behind it. I'm happy with what I got. So.
Yeah, and that's a good quality lift and a good quality company, right?
Yes.
A lot of people buy these cheap plastic phenolic inserts that are $25, and some of them are curved like a banana. Like, I can't believe how bad they are.
Mhm.
And you say to the manufacturer, well, this thing's convex like crazy. And they say, well, the weight of the router will bring it down flat. It's like, well, this router here weighs 10 pounds and this one weighs 20.
Yeah.
So how are they both going to flatten exactly the same way? It doesn't happen.
Yeah.
That's their way of saying we don't care.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
well, and I've got, like I said, the plates are both flat, dead flat. I've had no problem. It's been hanging on that thing for a long time, and I've got the big Porter cable motor under there.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a lot of weight that's been on there for quite a few years, and
yeah, that's a 3 1/4 then.
yeah,
With the 5-speed on it, right?
yep.
Yeah, I know the one. That's the one that Jessom used to sell with their high-end router table, like all together.
Yes.
And yeah, it's a good router too.
Yeah, I love it.
You know, my router table, people kind of look at it kind of confused because they're used to seeing an insert always, like a removable plate.
Mhm.
But my router table, it's shop made, and basically the only insert is a round circular insert in the middle.
Mhm.
And I designed it to accept the plastic inserts that Lee Valley sells for their metal table that they sell.
Oh, okay.
But you know, I put in this Bosch router. It's a 1619 EBS router, and it plunges so high that I can still change the bit using the wrench from the top of the table.
Oh, cool.
Unless the bit is so big that it fills the entire hole, like a raised panel bit.
Oh, yeah.
So for a raised panel bit, I have to change the bit under the table, but for almost everything else, I'm able to still access it from the top. But what I like is that I don't have this plate where I have to worry about it always being level and not having sawdust in the grooves.
Mhm.
And on top of that, you know how you try to raise your, like you have a lift, so it's different, but when you try to raise a router up manually with your hands,
Yep.
and you don't have the fence over the plate at the time, then you just pop the whole thing up.
Yes.
It's really aggravating.
Yeah.
You know? I like mine because I just bolt it to the table and there's one hole, and I just have different insert hole sizes that I pop in there for different bits, but I don't have a plate, and the router almost never comes out.
Yeah, cool.
And I can raise it up easily without the fence. Like, I don't need the fence over that area because it's just bolted right to the table and doesn't move anywhere.
Oh, cool. I have a very small router table that it doesn't have the hole cut in the top yet for my, what I did is I helped a local woodcraft out with one of their um router classes, and my dad wanted to take the class, so I helped out and got him a deal on a class. But we made a small router table, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of the same idea that you said you were doing, but I'm going to do it with my trim router on this small table, so I can do smaller projects on that. So sometimes the big one is just a little too much.
Like I was at a guy's shop out in the Calgary area a couple of years ago, and he kind of rushed out and bought this cheap little router table just before I arrived because I told him we needed one, right?
Mhm.
And it was just an awful table, like one of these little tiny ones with the stubby legs and the aluminum groove table, right?
Oh, geez, yeah.
It's like a toy, right?
That was my first one. I hated it.
Yeah, luckily he didn't. I mean, it works well as a stool, you know, if you need to sit somewhere while you're whittling, but not much else. So I get there, and luckily he hadn't taken it out of the box and put it together yet, but I just looked at it, and I said, take it back. Like, when did you buy it? He said, last week. I said, take it back. You don't want that table. I grabbed a piece of 3/4 inch MDF, drilled a hole in the middle, put it over 2 sawhorses, and milled up a flat fence and clamped it down with 2 C-clamps. I said, that's what we're going to use this week. And it was amazingly good. Like, for something that took me an hour, right, or less. And it did everything we needed to do the whole week. I said, you know, a router table doesn't have to be super fancy. You know, you need a flat top and a sturdy fence. I mean, I would rather build a proper fence, not just have a piece of wood clamped on, but it did everything we needed for the whole week. And I said, you know, make yourself a nice one later after I'm gone, but don't compromise and buy this cheap stuff because you just hate the thing every time you turn it on. It's like a disaster.
Yeah, I think you and I have talked about it, and I think I've talked about it with a lot of people. It's one of them where if you can't afford it, you know, buy the best thing you can at least, because you're just going to suffer later, and then you're going to go, great, now I spent double, more money than I would have because this is junk.
Try selling one of those at the local yard sale. I mean, you get $10 for it.
Yeah, no. It's hard to give it to people sometimes.
Yeah. And they're unsafe too. Like, to me, a router table is a potentially very dangerous tool in the wrong hands.
Mm-hmm.
And it's even worse when it's a crazy little tiny table with no weight to it,
Yeah.
And usually a flimsy little plastic fence and some stupid guard that's in the way all the time. And
mm-hmm.
I just can't stand stuff like that.
Yeah.
I mean, I would rather, like I said, I would rather just take a piece of MDF and put a hole in it and call that a router table, rather than use one of those little things. I need the size too. Like, my router table isn't huge. It's about 24 by 30 or so.
Mm-hmm.
But I find it a good size. Like, it's not huge, but it's not tiny. Most of the store-bought cheap ones, just at the local
big
hardware store, they're tiny. And you try to route something even 3 feet long, and already you're in trouble.
Yeah.
So, you got the roller stands all over the place. It's just like... it's just not good.
Sadly enough, I think many of us have been there with those roller stands, and then there's at some point you go, why am I doing this?
I mean, I have 4 roller stands. I still use them for certain things, but it's usually the entry level hobbyists that they don't even know what's out there in the market and what's possible. They just walk into the local hardware store and buy whatever's sitting there.
Yep.
And, it takes, they might, like someone like that might book a half day in my shop to get help with their router table because they're struggling and they're almost like cutting fingers off using it.
Mm-hmm.
And I show them mine and they're like, wow, like yours is so much better. And it's just a homemade thing. And I'm like, yeah, there's only $100 in material in the whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
Go home and spend some time building the router table and you're going to improve your woodworking just using that as a project anyway.
Yeah.
And forget about the little aluminum top one. Take it back,
Yeah, I'm happy with mine. It's the top is bought in the fence and the lift and everything, and I like it. But the everything that it sits on, excuse me, I made a box that encloses the motor, and it's all the vacuum hooks up to everything, and so it pulls from underneath and behind the bit, both the way I set it up.
Yeah.
And then it's got a stand that it's on. The router bits are on one side of the stand, and then everything else for my router is underneath it. And I built that whole thing, and it's got plexiglass in the front. And it's I love it. I wouldn't trade it for the world.
Yeah, I mean, mine is still dust collection in the fence, but nothing underneath, like not even a cabinet.
Mm-hmm.
So it does a pretty good job at dust collection on, a little edge treatment or something like that. But you get the raised panel bit going, and pretty much the floor's covered, right?
Yeah. That's one thing with this one. Big, small, whatever. I hardly have anything that gets away from this one because of the way I built the box underneath. It works really nice.
Yeah, I built my router table about 16, 17 years ago, and I always said I would box in the bottom, and I'm still talking about it.
Still talking about it, yeah.
One of those things you put on the to-do list, and
mm-hmm.
more important things to do, along the way. It's just hard to get to stuff like that.
Oh, yeah.
So I throw on a dust mask and keep going.
Well, see, I think my shop is downstairs in the basement, so I think I gotta try to keep it at least so nobody gets mad.
Right. Well, the more wood dust I have on the floor, I can just use it as a filler in my cabbage rolls.
There you go, more filling.
need something to bulk it up a bit.
Well, speaking of cabbage rolls, I think my wife is made. She calls it pounded chicken. I'm not sure. I know that she tenderizes the chicken, and there's breading and a lot of garlic and butter, and I think I can smell it cooking up there right now. So.
Oh yeah. So she pounds it with the tenderizer.
Yep.
With the hammer, yeah.
Yeah, she's got the tenderizer out, and it pretty much falls apart, and it's wonderful.
Okay. She probably pretends it's you, like if she's mad at you and starts punching the chicken out.
So, some days I probably don't blame her.
I'd like to see a video of that. That'll get some hits on your site.
Yeah, maybe I'd have more traffic that way.
Yeah.
So I suppose I better get up there and check it out
Well, enjoy your dinner.
Before they eat it all on me. So, well, hey, thanks, Hendrik, and
Okay.
we'll talk in a couple months again.
Sure. Sounds good.
All right, thanks a lot.
Okay.
I'll let you know how the doors go.
Yeah. Okay. Talk to you soon.
Thank you. Bye.
Okay. Bye.